It wasn't built to be beautiful. It was born of fear. Stretching along ridges and across plains, appearing and vanishing with the land, the Great Wall of China is often seen as a monument to permanence, a single, unbroken ribbon of stone that promises protection. But the untold story behind this impossible structure is less about aesthetics and more about anxiety, labor, and power. Why would an empire attempt to draw a line thousands of miles long across some of the harshest terrain on Earth? And what did that line cost the people forced to make it? Long before a single continuous barrier existed, the northern frontier was a patchwork of defenses. Small earthen embankments, wooden palisades, and isolated fortresses rose where needed, then fell back into the soil. Villages learned to live with the thunder of mounted raiders and the smoke of burned granaries. For centuries, the steppes to the north slid across the map like a threat in motion, sudden, mobile, and hard to pin down. Those recurring attacks were the immediate practical problem, but they were also the justification for a sweeping political project, to make borders not only a defensive posture, but a statement of authority. The decision to splice those fragments into one continuous system came with the rise of a ruler who sought unification. In the 3rd century BCE, the man known to history as the first emperor embarked on an ambitious campaign to weld warring states into a single polity. Connecting the defensive strands into a single line was as much about security as it was about control, a visible proof of the ability to marshal labor and regulate movement. The wall would be a boundary on the map and a demonstration of centralized power on the ground. What followed was not a single construction, but a series of campaigns, repairs, and reimaginings that stretched across centuries. Building in ancient China meant hauling materials up ridgelines that had no roadbeds, moving earth and stone by human backs, and improvising where the landscape offered no help. Imagine a slope shrouded in morning mist, men forming a living chain, passing buckets of tamped earth or stones shoulder to shoulder. Think of women and older children carrying woven baskets, their straps cutting into skin, of craftsmen shaping bricks on site during brief summer windows, and of prisoners pushed into the line under military watch. There were no cranes, no heavy carts on paved highways, no mechanized hoists. Timber from nearby forests became scaffolding. Narrow ramps and earthen causeways were invented on the spot to take block and soil up steep crests. In some sections, wheelbarrows and pack animals eased the work, but many critical stretches demanded that human muscle do the heavy lifting. The air would have been filled with the metallic clink of hammers, the dull thud of compacted earth, the rasping of ropes, and the scent of smoke from communal fires. Winters were punishing. Frost made stone brittle and fingers numb. Summer dust turned to choking powder when the wind rose. Who provided this labor? The ranks were drawn from peasants pressed into corvée duty, criminals sentenced to work, soldiers assigned to construction detachments, and artisans hired or conscripted for specific tasks. The wall was a social machine. It moved people as efficiently as it moved stone. Families were often broken, farms left untended, and local economies redirected toward an imperial need. Small vignettes. A woman mending her husband's worn strap, a boy watching a line of carts depart without his father, a craftsman hammering a brick with the same hand he used to carve household tools. Give the human scale to a project otherwise measured in miles. Not every death or loss is a tally easily translated into modern numbers. In some regions, local memory holds that the wall rose on a foundation of human bones. In others, burial sites have been discovered near construction camps, suggesting that death was a reality for those who labored there. Archaeologists have found human remains in association with certain work sites, but the stark image of a wall literally paved with corpses is a cultural perception as much as historical shorthand. What we can say with confidence is that many who went to build the wall did not return to their villages in the same condition, and that the anonymity of the workforce, nameless hands shaping a monumental line, is one of the wall's most enduring moral stains. The Great Wall was not a single invention, but an evolving military architecture. Early defenses relied on tamped earth, layers of compacted soil piled and pounded to form bulwarks that, given time and maintenance, could stand surprisingly firm. Later periods introduced fired bricks and carved stone where materials and technology allowed. Engineers learned to incorporate drainage channels to prevent erosion, to shape stairways into steep bastions, and to design platforms that could hold archers or, in later centuries, gun emplacements. That technological evolution was matched by changes in tactical thinking. The wall's defensive posture depended on a distributed system of watchtowers and signal stations. Beacon towers sat on crest lines like a necklace of sentinels. Fires, smoke, or flags became the pulse that moved information across ridges. A message could travel the length of the line in hours rather than days, enabling garrisons to prepare for an incursion. But communication was never perfect. Weather could smother signals, and local decisions often mattered more than imperial edicts. A watchman's misread flame or a delayed relay could turn a warning into an afterthought. Even at its most intact, the wall was never an impenetrable barrier. It was excellent at channeling movement, funneling groups into passages where they could be monitored or repelled, but not at stopping a determined or adaptive adversary outright. Raiders found ways to bypass the main line. They slipped through mountain passes, corrupted gatekeepers, or used the wall's own geography to their advantage. Moreover, the wall's very existence could tie down resources in ways that left other parts of the frontier vulnerable. A massive stone rampart is a statement of will. It can be a deterrent and a provocation simultaneously. Crucially, the wall did domestic work as much as it did foreign. Checkpoints controlled the flow of goods and people, becoming tools of taxation and regulation. Passes were places where identities were confirmed, where markets were supervised, and where the state could exert surveillance. The same structure that slowed raiders also slowed travelers returning home and merchants seeking profit. In this way, the wall was an instrument of internal governance. It bound the map into a format that made population movement legible to the state. Time reshaped both the wall and its makers. Dynasties rose, fell, and sometimes arrived from the very steppes the wall had once aimed to stop. Empires of steppe origin later ruled large portions of China. The Mongol Yuan dynasty and the Manchu Qing are historic examples of powers that began with roots outside the traditional heartland. Under different rulers, the wall was repaired, neglected, or repurposed. Sections were reinforced with bricks and stout battlements. Other stretches were allowed to crumble. Where the wall was modernized, drainage and staircases improved, and, in the Ming era, gun embrasures were added to accommodate gunpowder weapons. What began as earthen bunds in some places ended as fortified brick-built ramparts in others. A palimpsest of military technology layered over centuries. Popular images have simplified this complexity into myths. The idea that the Great Wall is visible from space with the naked eye belongs on a postcard of misconceptions. In reality, much of the wall threads through countryside that reclaims it. Many stretches are ruins, overgrown and broken, visible only when one knows where to look. Restored sections near tourist hubs have been rebuilt to meet modern safety and aesthetic standards, creating a kind of stage set. Neat bricks, even steps, and railings for visitors. Move away from those sections, and the wall becomes a different object. Fallen stones hidden under grass, collapsed platforms, and earthen mounds that read more like scars than a continuous bright line. That contrast reveals something essential about memory and spectacle. Tourists gather to photograph the wall in sunshine, to scramble up watchtowers and place their hands on bricks that have been carefully mortared for modern safety. Selfies and social media captions can flatten history into an image of triumph. Yet just a few miles away, entire stretches crumble, and the stories of the laborers who built those stones are invisible to the cameras. Restoration itself raises ethical questions. When a section is rebuilt, what version of the past are we choosing to remember? Are we preserving authenticity, or are we crafting a narrative that comforts rather than complicates? There are paradoxes in the wall's story that make it morally knotty. It stands as protection for communities and rulers alike, yet it is also a requiem for those who paid with life and toil. It is an instrument designed to keep others out. Yet dynasties that once might have been considered outsiders later ruled from within. It is a monument to human ingenuity. The engineering feats of moving stone up dizzying crests, the coordination of watchtowers across impossible distances, and simultaneously a ledger of compulsion, forced labor, disrupted lives, and the quiet endurance of nameless hands. If you visit the wall today, you may encounter both realities. You can walk along a restored parapet where guideboards explain architectural details and the path is firm beneath your feet. Or you can find a lonelier ridge where grass has pushed through collapsed stones and the wind insists on silence. If you see it in person, look not only at the line but along it, for places of repair and places of ruin, for the small piles where bricks have fallen, and for the terraces where watchtowers once kept their eternal watch. Listen for the echoes, the imagined clang of hammers, the murmur of a line of men passing buckets, the dull, private grief of families left behind. The Great Wall keeps many stories. Some are about defense and the mechanics of war. Others are about the administration of empire, about how a state measures and manages movement. But the most neglected stories are often the human ones, the daily grind of making a frontier, the quiet deaths that leave no ledger entry, the way an ambitious project redraws lives as much as it redraws a map. This is the untold story behind this impossible structure. Not a single narrative of glory, nor a single record of atrocity, but a braided tale of necessity and coercion, of skill and sorrow, of spectacle and shadow. The wall is a monument to what a state can do with will and labor, to both protection and domination. To stand beside it is to be confronted by that duality. If this changed how you see the wall, subscribe and join us for the next story. There are more untold histories waiting that will ask you to look again at familiar monuments, and perhaps to listen to the silences between the stones.